Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're talking about a hot topic in the Star Stable community, and this is something that's it's a very classic topic. Will we get a new area in the game this year or even in the near future? And this is something that's discussed a lot in the Star Stable community, but I think that when it's being discussed, it's often just based off assumption and not really actual facts and the hints that Star Stable has given us, because Star Stable has basically told us about this. And I can say that there's a pretty straightforward answer to if we will get a new area or not, and it is yes, but with some important details that we need to keep in mind. So before I go on with video, please consider subscribing if you enjoy this type of content, or if you just want to see more from me, and leave a comment, as I always try to respond to all of my comments that I get. So getting a new area in Star Stable is about the biggest of the biggest updates we get. It's a pretty big deal when this happens, and I'm sure you all know that. The last time we unlocked an area was by the Tailtop Village, which I don't know if it really counts. Obviously it was new area, but for me it just felt like an expansion of Mistfall. Or I guess if you say the last time would be maybe the Moorland riding camp, which again isn't a completely new area because it is an expansion. But yeah, anyways, this is not something that happens often, getting a completely new area. It's not a common thing, because it does require a tremendous amount of work and planning by the Star Stable team, and it also has to be the right moment. I have analyzed a lot of blog posts from Star Stable, which is the kind of behind the scenes notes that they release every now and then. You can find them on the Star Stable website. I'm also going to try to link some of them below. But I'm going to break down Star Stable's future plans down for you guys, as they have actually shared it. The blog posts are pretty long, so it does kind of take a long time to read through all of them, but I'm gonna share the important information with you. In a blog post that was released a while ago, the Star Stable team explained that in 2025, they're focusing on two types of projects, or I guess these are the types of projects that has always been in Star Stable. And this is what you need to understand in order to kind of understand the updates that are coming. So there are two types of projects for Star Stable. It is the fixed deadline and the soft deadline. So fixed deadline projects have a set release date and include things like horses and events, and for example the Trailblazer tracks, because they are set to release at a specific date, and they have this set deadline that the team works, and it's going to be finished this day and it's going to be released this day. So the fixed deadline projects make up most of the weekly updates that we see every Wednesday, so obviously they need to have an update for us every Wednesday, and that is why they have this deadline where this update needs to be out this Wednesday. Soft deadline projects, on the other hand, are more flexible and they don't really have a specific set release date. These projects are the larger, more complex updates that don't really have a specific release date and are allowed to take the time they need. And the best example of a soft deadline project is, for example, a new area release or remodeling of the already existing area in game. So when Star Stable releases new areas, I don't think it's they don't say oh, this is going to be finished August 5th. It kind of needs to date, they kind of don't really have a set idea of exactly when that's going to be released, because it's a pretty big update. But this is so that we don't see a massive update every single week, obviously, like an area release. But when these big things do arrive, they are usually more polished and meaningful. So that's why you guys seem to understand. I'm sure most Star Stable players understand that there's a difference between the normal Wednesday updates and the more bigger updates that we get. Now let's talk about new areas specifically, because as you guys probably have noticed, Star Stable seems to have focused on revamping areas that we already know, for example the Baroness track, Silverglade Manor, Hollow Woods, Steve's Farm, and all of those places. Even just Moorland, but that was a couple of years ago though. But anyways, I think that was the first area to be revamped actually. But anyways, the reason why areas like these are getting revamped, areas that we already have in the game is getting revamped, is actually because the CEO of Star Stable got the impression, obviously he has all of the player charts and can see what everyone does in the game, and also reads a lot of feedback. The Star Stable CEO actually got the impression that many players really like to visit areas for example the Hollow Woods but there wasn't really any reason to go there, you know, because before this update with Hollow Woods, there wasn't really anything to do there. So there was no reason to keep coming back, even though players may have want to be in that area. So because of this, they have started to add things like the whole runology questline in the Hollow Woods, because it gives players a purpose to visit an area and also play the game even though they don't really have any quests to do. Like for example, me, who is a player that has finished all the quests and like I'm finished with everything basically, runology is a reason for me to play the game because it's like progress isn't as quick as it is in normal quests. The CEO has stated that they wish to continue adding game mechanics like these, so like the Hollowwood thing, in order to give players more to do in the game, so that, you know, they're gonna give us quests that, or like things, activities to do in the game that take longer. For example, the like Soul Rider horse, I don't remember what it's called, like the Soul Steed, is that what it's called? I don't know. But that's one of the examples, but I feel like Sourceable kind of failed with that because like the quests that you do there are very repetitive, and yeah, I don't know, but they want to add more things like this. The CEO actually also mentioned Mistfall at one point, how Mistfall is a very, very beautiful area. However, players don't really see themselves visiting there often, like after finishing the quests there, because there's no reason, like there's nothing to do there really, like a couple of races, but that's really it. And I actually find myself going to Mistfall sometimes just to like look at the area, because it's like it's so beautiful but there's really nothing to do there. So, you know, the CEO is basically saying that he wants to add more things like that makes areas more active. So whether that's a hint of a new area or not, I'm not completely sure, but that means at least that we're getting more areas revamped. So to put it short, Star Stable made it clear that they are shifting focus when it comes to world building. Instead of just adding new areas and moving on, they want to kind of like enrich the existing locations and give players like us the better reason to return to the game and have more to do in the game besides the like normal everyday stuff. I also want to mention that the CEO said that the Hollow Woods and Silverglade Manor are actually not done yet. He said that these areas that have already been revamped are not completely finished, which I don't really understand because like obviously they've been revamped, but I don't know, are they planning on like adding more things there? I don't know, but that's what he said at least, so I can't really imagine what that would be. But according to the blog, from what I understand, this year's focus area that Sourceable is focusing on is actually one that hasn't been opened up yet. And there was one line about this. They literally did not say anything else about this almost, but they said this year's focus area is one that hasn't been opened yet, and that basically says that we are getting a new area. The story and lore behind it has already been developed, and the theming and gameplay ideas are beginning to be explored. And the CEO of Star Stable also mentioned something very interesting in the same post. That is that, you know, while the Star Stable CEO, he didn't actually work directly on the Star Stable online game originally when it first released, but he did actually help create earlier games like Star Academy and Star Shin Legacy. So this CEO of Star Stable obviously has some connection to the older universe of Star Stable. And you know, I know a lot of people complain about the new Star Stable team and how they're very disconnected from the game. Reading this blog post actually made me a little happy because, like, you know, I already knew this, but the Star Stable CEO, I believe his name is Johan Sjöberg, he's actually worked on the older games, and so he has this type of connection with those games. And I've already mentioned this in a video before actually, and I think this is really, really interesting. And that is that the CEO of Star Stable has actually said that there are still locations from the older Star Stable games that haven't made it into Star Stable Online yet. And we already know this, but he actually said that he would like to bring these areas into Star Stable when the time is right, which is a pretty strong hint that classic locations are going to be part of the future expansions of Star Stable. Where exactly these areas could be is so fun because I actually have a whole video on that already, and where I think that is. You know, I made the whole Mystic Valley video, so personally I suspect that it will be somewhere around Mystic Valley, and there are several reasons for that. First of all, it's one of the only places in the map that's able to be expanded, or like the map is now, it's like kind of the only place where there's space for expansion, and also the map is starting to become pretty full. There's also the tunnel at Northlink where there's ongoing construction to go through a tunnel that leads to Mystic Valley. And by the way, if you don't know what Mystic Valley is, It is the area a little above the Golden Hills and like that general area. This area already exists in older Star Stable games. This is an area that like canonically exists within the Star Stable universe, and if you would like to know more about this, then feel free to go watch my video on Mystic Valley. As I said, I made a whole video about that. But yeah, the CEO saying that there are areas from the older game he would like to see in Star Stable Online makes me really believe that the new area is going to be somewhere around there. I also want to directly quote the CEO because he did also say this: "We have started to investigate if it is indeed time to expand the map. If all goes to plan, you might hear more about this later this year." So I don't know if this means that we will hear more about it in the blog post, or that we will start seeing updates or start having updates relating to this. There is also the opportunity that the new area that is being revamped or added is Dino Valley and Ashland. Star Stable did mention not too long ago that they didn't want to add mountain climbing with the mules due to players may having easier access to Ashland, which may hint that something is going on there. But yeah, I'm not completely sure. I think that they're talking about a completely new area here, but I think that if they did revamp the Dino Valley, that will also include Ashland. To sum it all up, a new area is coming. It's already being planned and developed, but it doesn't have a release date yet. It could launch later this year, it could launch next year, or even further away in that, which I have very little belief in that it actually will launch this year, because it usually takes a while. But what do I know? There may be even more to come, including potential map expansions and locations inspired by older Star Stable games, which I'm really excited to see in the game. But yeah, that's really everything we know so far and that I've gotten out of the blog post. So let me know in the comments, what kind of new area would you love to see in Norvik, and do you think we're getting the new area soon? Let me know. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!